Hello, and welcome to the I3 Community Webinar on Building a Flexible Dissemination Strategy. I'm Heidi Larson, and I'm pleased to have you with us. Next slide, please, Nate. The overriding objective of this webinar is to help you to plan and implement your own dissemination strategy. To that end, we'll first present an overview of considerations and guidance to, we hope, help you with your own planning. And then representatives from development and validation grants will talk about their own considerations as they worked within their grant parameters, including time, resources, budgets, etc., to strategize and carry out their own dissemination plans. Next slide. We're very thankful to Kathy London and Jennifer DeFilia of the Development Grant Everyday Arts for Special Education, or EASE, and to Donna Sterling and Jill Williams of the Validation Grant, Virginia Initiative for Science Teaching and Achievement, or VISTA, for sticking with us through the government shutdown to talk with you today. They'll introduce themselves in a little bit more detail at the beginning of their presentation, but please join me in welcoming them. Next slide. We're also fortunate that we can hear from Peter Orn, who's done an excellent job as Dissemination Manager for the Regional Educational Laboratory Northeastern Islands at Education Development Center for the past 5 years, as well as holding other dissemination titles at EDC and elsewhere. And again, I'm Heidi Larson, an I3TA liaison who's working with Peter on dissemination. Now the next slide. So, we know that many of you have already conducted some dissemination activities, and we'd like to hear from you during this webinar. To begin, we'd like to know the following. Have you begun thinking about a dissemination strategy? A poll will appear, and you can answer yes or no. But in the chat, we'd like to hear how far you've gotten with your strategy if you answered yes. And to do the chat, you can click on the green bar at the top that says Viewing Nate Levin's Desktop, and click on Chat, and then you can type your answer to all participants. So where it says Send to, it may say Send to Host Now. You can click that drop down and choose all participants. So you have a couple minutes now to answer yes or no to this poll question, and then we'll see the results. And Nate Blevins is behind the scenes, and thank you, Nate, for being our technical person. Nate is forwarding the slides, but he's also staffing the polls. So he will be showing us the results of this poll in just a minute. Or Nate, I think you can probably show them to us now. So it looks like we have a little bit of an equilibrium.
Yeah, great. It looks like about almost half have begun a plan, and 20% no, and then about a third no answer.
All right, so we will keep that in mind as we go through. I'm glad to see that so many of you have already begun thinking, and we hope that this webinar will be helpful for both you and those who haven't begun yet. So Nate, I think you can go to the next slide. So we have 2 more questions that we want to find out some information from you, and we want you to think about these for later in the webinar. We're going to come back to them at the end. So question number 2 is, what are the top 2 most important audiences you want to reach with a dissemination plan? And then the third question is, what do you think is the most effective delivery channel, website, webinars, conference presentations, etc., for dissemination for your grant? And we want you to think about these questions, or we'd like you to think about these questions during the webinar, and hopefully they will influence your answers by the end. So, and now next slide and on to the main event. Over to you, Peter.
Thanks, Heidi. Yeah, I want to just start today this portion by reflecting for a minute on a few of the many good reasons to disseminate. And if you have some of your own you'd like to add, please just post those in the chat box. Can we all be able to see that publicly? That might be. On the chat box? Yeah, if possible.
The green bar at the top, and then you can, that will open it up. You click on the chat button there, and then you'll be able to pull the chat panel over to the right side of the screen.
Great. So perhaps the most obvious is to raise awareness about your grant and your work and its outcomes, both internally and externally. But there are broader goals as well. Dissemination can promote collaboration and cooperation. It's also important for the growth of a discipline and its practitioners, and it can foster better goal setting and better decision making. Of course, their dissemination has its challenges historically and currently. There is long-held misperceptions that it's inert, this idea that once you publish in a journal, you have disseminated. But there's challenges. Certain formats may simply not reach much of the field or have the impact you hope for. Sometimes the jargon, specifically the language of research, may be difficult to translate for a broader audience. Budgets, resources, certain kinds of expertise, technological, writing for broader audiences can be scarce. And today there are so many channels or delivery vehicles to disseminate through, whether it's technology or the range of conference venues, it can be hard to know which ones are most effective. Next slide, please. So let's take a look at some questions you can ask yourselves as you set out to create a plan. And these questions, if you revisit them, can help keep your plan adaptable over time. Carrying that point forward about so many channels, sometimes the vehicle itself can be misconstrued as the plan, like an expensive website or a mass emailing, but there's some risk to investing in one big thing when you really want to be advancing a few different things at the same time and experimenting and seeing how they work together. So it's seeing dissemination more as multi-channel than multi-layered, which I'll get to a little later. Next slide, please, Nate. So the first question is, what exactly do you want to disseminate? This is a good place to start. Is it knowledge about your grant, the outcomes already, something you've created or found? It's good to settle on a core message about what you want to disseminate and agree on that as a team so that you have a shared understanding, because it can be a mix of things that will shift over time. The early thrust might be your mission, objectives, and preliminary accomplishments. Program outcomes and implications would generally come later. Study findings and their implications, products, materials, and their various uses. So if you list out what you as a team have agreed to disseminate and then revisit that every 3 to 6 months, you can adapt your plan as you go. And one technique is to sort of front-end by framing your work in the context of a major educational issue or an institutional problem or professional challenge that your grant is addressing. So state that as clearly and simply as possible, and you can reuse that language for different audiences. But it's also important because you can't necessarily assume that a wider audience will know just how to situate your work in their own context. Next slide, please. Another key question that can help you answer what is why. For example, do you need to raise awareness? At the beginning of the project, typically you want to increase interest or build an identity. This can open up new opportunities for sustainability, future funding, and scale-up. Another reason is that you may need to increase understanding among a specific audience, bringing a deeper level of that understanding about your work or its outcomes. And a third sort of why question that may apply is, are you disseminating for action? A specific group you need to work with to bring about a change through the implementation of a new innovation or a tool, new approaches, or research findings. So that kind of dissemination may focus on one-to-one outreach and securing commitments from leaders of those groups that you need to work with. If you don't know, what would be most valuable for your grant at this time? And feel free to enter that in the chat box, and perhaps we'll be able to circle back and take a look at those comments later. Next slide, please, Nate. And then the next question is, to whom? This is where you want to really think about who you need to reach and try to identify those different audiences. In many cases, your primary target audience is internal in the district or the schools right around you, so the target is the leadership and the people who report to them. But more broadly, it can be policymakers in their associations, practitioners in their associations, specific funders, project sustainers in their institutions. If this is done, this outreach is done effectively, your target audiences will also sort of secondarily help you disseminate through their own events and publications and listservs and Twitter feeds. So as you enter into creating a strategy and then carrying it out, don't feel like you're going to be doing 100% of all the disseminating on your own. Next slide, please. This is who will be the messenger. perhaps this is pretty easily overlooked. You may already know, but you really want to settle on who will be the messenger around the more significant things you need to disseminate, because that can affect the credibility of your message. So typically, for program outcomes, the messenger is the project director, the manager, and or the evaluator. Next slide. So now you're at this point where you've thought about what and why, some of your core messages and framing, who you need to reach and the scope of that. So how can you think about which delivery channels or vehicles through which to focus your efforts? And in this slide, I'm using a knowledge utilization pyramid, which is an inverted pyramid to demonstrate this. The pyramid shows how dissemination today can be multi-channeled and multi-layered, and each layer can require different skills and resources and networks. So at the top of the pyramid is what we call spread, which is a wide-scale effort typically aided by the many information technology and marketing tools that are available to us today. That's branding, websites, e-newsletters, 1- or 2-page briefs, mailing list, which, as it grows, you can segment it by audience as necessary. Social media, certain apps, video, narrated PowerPoints, and so many more. In the middle of the pyramid is what we call choice and exchange, which is providing opportunities for stakeholders to find what they need or to exchange ideas around what you're disseminating. It's that deeper level of understanding that I mentioned earlier. And this can be facilitated with a website or, say, at a conference booth, but often people want to have some meaningful interaction with the owners or creators of the new knowledge. So creating an event series can foster this, whether it's through webinars or participating at external conferences, speaking, through focused meetings with key decision makers. We're finding more and more that recordings of webinars can be just as popular as the live session, because people whose calendars are really packed can watch them when they have the free time and still sort of get this sense of exchange and finding what they need to know about what you're disseminating. And then finally, the last level is implementation of new knowledge using technical assistance or training, where you create a knowledge use plan and roll that out through workshops, workbooks. So they can be face-to-face or webinar, and then drawing on potentially some mix of the promotional tools above, but where you're securing commitments and dates and times with the groups you need to work with. And I put mailing list in red here just because I want to point out the value of a mailing list in all these efforts. Even if it's starting by collecting just a couple of names of the people, a couple dozen of the names of the people who should learn more about your work, because this can help you grow a mailing list that will serve you for months or years to come. The people you're emailing will, in turn, forward your information to other parties, and they will want to join your list as well. Next slide. What impact? Well, a good plan will, measure the impact of your efforts, certainly after, say, 3, 6 months, 9 months, a year. So you want to begin comparing your expectations with your dissemination achievements. So be sure you set some targets that are realistic and some goals that are achievable based on your resources. Measuring impact can happen in a couple of ways. You can deploy surveys. For example, immediately after a webinar, you could use a survey tool to ask questions about what was most helpful or least helpful, or how the participants will use the information that you've shared. You can use the attendee list to send the same survey to the same group 3 months later to see how the knowledge was used. Another pretty straightforward way to measure impact is to begin collecting simple metrics. And they can be very simple: the size of your mailing list and how fast it's growing, the number of hits on your website, retweets on a Twitter feed, number of downloads of reports and other documents such as brochures and briefings, the number of plays on any videos you create, although I will add probably video is the most challenging to sort of gauge the return on labor and sometimes cost, because you can go to great lengths to do a wonderful video and get playbacks in the double digits. So it's kind of one to be watchful for. And then numbers of attendees at webinars or events are good simple metrics to track. And then you can use this data formatively to adapt your plan as you go. And next slide, Nate, thanks. And then to conclude, as you sit down to write up an action plan, try creating a framework that identifies the purpose of each activity, the audience it's intended for, the method, and by that I mean sort of electronic, print, webinar, face-to-face, the delivery channels you've chosen, time frame of dates and months for when you want to do it, and whose responsibility it is. The point person is typically someone on your team, but it can also be a point person at an institution or an association you want to work with. There's a pretty good exercise in one of the dissemination documents on the dissemination section of the I3 website that can help you with this. It's called Creating an Effective Dissemination Strategy. And it can also take you through costing out some of these activities. It's obviously not just labor you want to consider, but materials costs, technology platforms, those that you sort of fee for service, or even customized development with external vendors. So those are the range of questions I wanted to just raise, and each one of them, you can think of them consecutively, but each one is a pretty effective entry point for starting to set some goals and create a dissemination strategy.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Peter. I'm interested in, before we go on, if you have any impact measurements that you've been using in your dissemination strategy, or if you have used the broad spread or the narrow pointed dissemination, please feel free to, we'd love for you to type this in the chat room. That would be nice for everybody to see what you're all doing. I know that there's many things going on with dissemination already, so we want this to be all of our webinar. But with that, Peter's going to introduce the next section. Oh, sorry, we are going to move ahead. So next slide, Nate. And we're going to move right into Everyday Arts for Special Education.
From Urban Arts Partnership, and I'm with Kathy London.
Hi, I'm Kathy, and I'm the EASE Project Director and the Art Director for District 75 of the New York City Department of Education. And thank you, Nate and Heidi, for having us on today.
Next slide. Urban Arts Partnership is the largest arts education organization in New York City. We serve over 90 Title I schools, and that we're really looking to reach students that are struggling the most in order to achieve our mission of closing the achievement gap. With Everyday Arts for Special Education, we're currently serving over 240 teachers, and by the end of the I3 grant, we'll have served over 40,000 students. Next slide.
EASE, Everyday Arts for Special Education, is a collaboration between District 75, a school district, and Urban Arts Partnership, a nonprofit. And so I speak from the school district side. District 75 serves students with disabilities, with significant disabilities. We serve approximately 23,000 students who have significant disabilities and require services and support beyond what the community school district provides. So our district includes 56 school organizations and over 300 sites. The EASE research program is in 10 school organizations, over 38 sites, and part of our internal dissemination strategy is to expand beyond the research sites to the whole of the organization. We are a development grant, and we received the grant in 2010. It is a 5-year research grant, so it's up in 2015, and we're now in year 4. And so some of our dissemination strategies are really kicking in now since we've passed the midpoint of the grant. In a nutshell, EASE uses movement, drama, and visual arts to deliver curricular content in ways that engage our students who have significant disabilities. Next slide.
The next few slides, we're going to be going over our internal and external and dissemination strategies. And we're currently working through both of these strategies, and that's, again, what we'll show. Internally, we are facilitating trainings within the New York City's Department of District 75 as originally outlined through the grant, as well as facilitating new opportunities within the district. And so that's what we think about when we're talking about internally. We're really looking at within District 75 in New York City. Externally, we've taken a good look at our stakeholders and supporters of our organization as a whole and leveraged opportunities to begin a larger national dissemination of ease. Next slide.
So I'll speak to the internal District 75 district-wide dissemination. So we have several things that are going on and a lot of moving parts. And within our EASE treatment schools, which are the 10 schools, the official grant research component of EASE, we offer paraprofessional trainings, which are outside of the original context of the grant because we saw the need and we instituted it due to the need to have paraprofessionals bring their game on and have the involvement in what was going on in the classroom. But that has also led to parent workshops, and this is a way to involve parents in what is going on in their children's classroom, and in many ways they have become the best advocates of the program because parent advocates are really powerful. We've expanded beyond the 10 treatment schools to what we call these district-wide trainings, and these are multiple-day trainings that are self-selected by teachers. They come online, they sign up for professional development, and they are not part of the 10 schools of the research project. Teachers in District 75, well, in New York City, need to accumulate a certain amount of hours of professional development training. So these trainings help them receive that requirement. They receive credit for them, and they count towards what teachers need to acquire for their licensure requirement. The EASE district-wide trainings are also targeted to elementary students, but many of the teachers that sign up are not elementary teachers, so we really have to tailor that to their needs to a certain extent. We have to, switch gears a little bit to give them the aspects of the program that will work for them. So that's, part of our district-wide dissemination. Also, we do district-wide specialty trainings, and by that I mean we have a lot of clinical staff in District 75, psychologists, social workers, guidance counselors. We also offer workshops for occupational therapists, physical therapists, speech providers, early childhood educators, and as mentioned before, for parents. And then examples of the, internal presentations, internal dissemination through presentations through the district. We have had internal conferences on social emotional learning, early childhood professional development conferences. District 75 has a close working relationship with Bank Street College of Education, and we've presented to their graduate students. Pretty much all we can, we've kind of spread the word throughout the district wherever possible. And teachers also want to share their dissemination, their success stories, and we've included their stories both at the district-wide trainings and the specialty trainings and the district-wide conferences. So that's been a way to disseminate what's happening on the ground through the district. Next slide.
So, great, thank you. We have all these great things going on within District 75 in New York City, and so we've really started to think about how we're going to disseminate and bring this work to a larger audience. And so the first strategy we used was to really look at our stakeholders, including our board members and our other partners across the country that were really interested in other programs that we have at Urban Arts. And this led to our EASE West expansion. And so looking at this, we have a partnership with the LAUSD, Los Angeles Unified School District administrators working on the Arts at the Core plan. And when we spoke with them, we found that they do also have a large need of training their teachers and other arts staff that are working with special education students. And so that was a big part. We served over 30 educators last year and hundreds of students, and we're going to continue that work with thanks to the Kennedy Center for this coming year. Another strategy we thought about was creating an audience of other community-based organizations that are also working with staff that are serving special needs students. And this also came through, again, our stakeholders. We're working with CBOs here in New York City, but we also have a partnership with a larger organization in Los Angeles. Another strategy was the Summer Institute, inviting people to come to us to learn our skills and the EASE techniques here. So every summer we're offering a 5-day Summer Institute during July. This past summer we brought together over 30 educators that were outside of the District 75 and even New York City to come together and learn together. This year we're also looking to kind of do a larger Summer Institute and expand that to 4 days in Los Angeles in 2014. And then really trying to get the word out there and get in front. So looking at conferences, New York Times articles, et cetera. And I think that's something that we're all always trying to do, but really kind of being cognizant of what is going to get the largest word out there and who our supporters are that we can leverage in order to help us get in front. And then there's the digital strategy. And we think about the digital strategy in 2 different ways, right? One way we do is to share our successes. And so that looks like EASE is in front of our newsletter, our annual report, our website, and then as well as how do we support the users with the materials and share our content. And that's something that we're really working through now. And currently, our District 75 cohort can access materials and download from our website. This has created for District 75 teachers and teaching artists in order to share their experiences. And also we're using a social media platform as well to share student stories and experiences. But now we're trying to think larger of like what a mobile platform could be so that many more people could be sharing this content across all staff, educators, and artists really throughout the nation. And so that's something that we're thinking about now. Next slide.
And so part of the sharing is a delicate balance because we really have such good content. We feel that we have excellent content that we want to share with everyone, but there is a balance on what we can share, when we can share it, what we can share now, and what we can share later. There is an issue of contamination, sharing resources versus contamination. What might affect the evaluators' data if teachers get curriculum or materials ahead of time and they may be part of the program later. And so if they may be part of a later cohort, we don't want them to have access too early. That has been an issue. So we've had this, as Jennifer mentioned, selective access to resources. So our level 1 cohort gets certain resources, level 2 cohort, certain resources, level 3, certain resources, and this is done through password-protected websites. And so different cohorts get different access. Also, our Summer Institute people get access to a range of resources and materials that are different from our District 75 teachers. Our administrators who are of the schools that are participating in the research, the 10 research schools, always want data. They want data about EASE in their schools, but that has been a bit of an issue for us as well because we don't want comparisons made between different schools and teachers over the course of the program because we feel that might affect the validity of the data that's submitted by teachers, and so we don't want to set up competition between schools. We want the data on the efficacy of the program, not individual schools. So there are these constant decisions that are made, and we do this really as a team, and through meetings with the District 75 end of the team and the Urban Arts Partnership end of the team with our evaluator and with his counterpoint at APP that he speaks to for I3TA support. These decisions are kind of made group-wise because we really want to factor in all of the pros and cons before we make these decisions about sharing. And so it's always a bit of a tricky question, what gets disseminated now and what gets disseminated later and at the end of the program and to who. We thank you.
Thank you both. Thank you both. We're going to open it up to questions now. If you do have any questions for EASE, please feel free to type them into the chat room. And again, you just click on the little green bar at the top and click on chat. And you can either, it'd be best if you selected all participants, send to all participants, and then we can see what you're asking.
Kathy and Jennifer, I had one question. This is Peter. You're running quite a full spectrum, complex set of IT with the websites, and then presumably you have sort of the boilerplate materials and that sort of thing, and then a lot of scheduling around workshops and face-to-face. Can you give us a sense of how you, whether you have a team running this, Jennifer, perhaps, or are you coordinating all of the activities at the same time?
We have some hardworking folks over here. Sita, the program manager for EASE, is definitely one of them. She's probably, the hardest working woman in show business, so to speak, or education. She's great. And no, it's a pretty small team. We have a lot of support throughout the organization as far as the development department and our operations department. But the day-to-day is really led by the program manager, Sita, as well as Kathy.
It's a small team with a very large Excel sheet because there really are a lot of moving parts. Scheduling is a very big challenge. Scheduling is a very big challenge with different periods that are mandated for certain things to go on in schools, and scheduling around all of that in 10 schools and 39 sites and 240 teachers is a huge challenge. But the team here at UAP has really been up to it, and they've really done a fine job.
It sounds like you're doing a fabulous job, and I know it's not easy with so many competing resources. We have a couple, or so many things competing for our limited resources. We have a couple of questions. One from Jill: what types of teacher resources will you be able to share by the end of the grant?
Well, currently all our teachers get curricular materials at the workshops, and then they use them with their teaching artist coaching during their classroom, and they have collaborative support visits. So they have materials that are always being updated as we learn things within the classroom through the research, and things are continuously refined, and the materials are continuously refined from one year to the next. And so those resources, we hope at the end of the 5 years, we will really have a really finished curricular guide, since at the end of the 5 years we hope we've made it perfect, and that will be available, and that will be available to teachers without pretty openly, without limiting access to anyone. And so we feel that that's really good material. It comes with music to be used that can be downloaded or uploaded, and visuals. And so really pretty much all you need to understand the program and use the program. Of course, it doesn't come with in-school support, and that's something that we'll kind of be thinking about after the grant ends, how to provide that support and how people can come to Urban Arts Partnership and request that support if they wish to. But the curriculum itself, the full curriculum, will be available to everyone.
Well, that kind of segues into another question from Martha Lee. If you found a way to sustain the program financially after the grant, and that's a little bit beyond the topic of dissemination, but certainly dissemination plays a part in obtaining any funding or sustainability.
Well, one of the initiatives we had this year was the beginning of a coach trainee program, and we had teachers that finished 3 years of the program, and 3 years is kind of the complete program. So we have some teachers now that will, again get 3 years, and our last 2 years of teachers will only get 2 years, but we just had graduates, 3-year graduates of the program, and they applied to become what we call EASE coach trainees. And so they will be a resource in their school, and we're hoping having coach trainees this year and next year will give the schools some people embedded in the schools that have this training knowledge and can really troubleshoot for that, and also help keep the program alive within the schools. Also, we anticipate that though the grant has ended, the fact that we've had district-wide trainings for now 4 years will kind of embed that in the culture of the professional development, and that we can still provide that. And then again, the individual schools could connect with UAP for additional in-school support.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Do you have anything, Jen?
Yeah, and something that we're thinking about as a whole organization, and is looking to see if how teachers can have pay differentials from getting certified in these. So it's a bit of a dream right now, but we're certainly not letting that discourage us in really looking at how to make our program sustainable within the schools themselves. So that's something that we're spending some time on now.
So thank you for your response. And we're going to move on, but there was one more question that I'm hoping that you can respond to in the chat. There was a question about how much is budgeted for your various levels of dissemination, but I'm wondering if you can turn that into maybe more what percentage you budgeted for the dissemination and how you came upon that level. So if one of you or both of you could just respond to that in the chat, that would be greatly appreciated. And then Nate, if you can go to the next slide, and I want to introduce Donna and Jill for VISTA, Virginia Initiative for Science Teaching and Achievement. And Nate will be unmuting you both, so you can get started.
Hi, this is Donna Sterling from George Mason University, and here with me today, actually she's in a different state, but is Jill Williams. I'm the principal investigator on the project and wrote the grant, and I'm directing the project. Jill was a communications manager, and she came on the project about 1 year into the program. And VISTA stands for Virginia Initiative for Science Teaching and Achievement. We had piloted this study, since we're a validation grant, we'd piloted a study in a few school districts in Virginia. And on this grant, we've been asked to take it statewide. The grant focuses on science, teaching, in particular problem-based learning, which is a method of learning science. It's a partnership of 7 universities within the state, as well as all of the school districts within the state. And we have 4 main professional development programs, one for elementary teachers, one for middle school, high school teachers, another one for school district science coordinators, and a 4th one for college faculty in either the education departments or the science departments that are people who are actually teaching science teachers or future science teachers. So we're building a statewide science education community. Next slide. This is a diagram that reflects how I was thinking about communication as we started the project, or for that matter, throughout the project. As you can see at the bottom of the slide, this is going through year 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. At the top of the slide is a rectangle. And what the rectangle indicates is we're always doing some form of communication constantly throughout the project, but what kinds of communication we're doing varies across the project. In our case, since we were going statewide, the very first thing we were doing was recruiting, because we needed to recruit statewide and create all of the materials for statewide recruiting. and our big message there was apply today. We're also doing ongoing analysis for each thing that we do. So we created our recruitment materials the first year, revised them the second year, and we went with a commercial company. So the quality of our materials developed over time. If you look at the green triangle at the top of the page, it talks about dissemination. And we're going to talk mostly today about external dissemination. So initially, we were not doing any dissemination at all because we didn't have anything to disseminate, and we're slowly building up across the entire project. Initially, we were doing local teacher success stories, and we've been getting an increasing number of success stories over time. Then after we started getting research results, we're interested in communicating our research results to main audiences, one of which is to the teachers or the practitioners, science coordinators, and so on. And the other is to the professional research audience, the researchers in the project. At the end of the last discussion, we were talking about balance. We also had the very same issues related to contamination versus dissemination. We're creating all these materials. We had a lot of people requesting materials, but we didn't want to contaminate our control group. So what we decided is the first 3 years of the projects, we would not disseminate any products that we used for professional development. Looking at the other end of the project in year 5, we decided basically we would disseminate all materials that were created for professional development. So right now we're in year 4, and this is a transition year. We are disseminating in, shall we say, small ways, more success stories, speaking at conferences, teachers giving examples at conferences, that kind of thing. With that being said, Jill, would you like to start talking about the purple rectangle additional content?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thank you, Donna. As Donna points out, we have this purple rectangle going across all 5 years of the program labeled additional content. When I came on board about a year into the project, I knew we needed to start saying something beyond the apply today message that we kept sending out there in order to keep our audience listening. So we worked to develop these additional content ideas, which included things like teacher tips and resources for teachers and other science education news. And we delivered all that information through a variety of vehicles or platforms that I'll talk about shortly. Now, as we're in year 4 of VISTA, we're shifting from recruiting to dissemination. And as Donna pointed out, that red arrow going across the bottom of this graphic is really key to making that shift successfully. We really focus on ongoing analysis of what we've been doing. We constantly evaluate the responses to our messages and fine-tune them to improve effectiveness and help us make decisions about what to do next. We've used several key tools to evaluate our effectiveness as we've moved through this program. On an ongoing basis, we are constantly analyzing why our applicants applied. The #1 reason we receive from them is word of mouth. They've heard about it from another teacher, from their principal, from somebody within their community. And the #2 reason is email. So I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But we also look closely at other analytics, for example, from our email marketing program, from our website, and from our social media sites to help us determine what's effective, what's not, and what we can do next to make things more effective. We also conducted a formal survey during year 3 of VISTA, asking our participants their opinions on what information and resources they would like to receive from us and how. That information has guided us into the dissemination phase. Next slide, please, Nate. All right, thank you. This slide offers an overview of our communications plan. It shows our answers to those questions that Peter was asking about what, why, who, how to disseminate things. I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but our primary audience for recruiting has been teachers and others in the science ed community across the state. Now we are shifting to a more national focus as we move to dissemination. Our early messages were all focused on recruiting. Now we're expanding those as we move into year 4 in dissemination. They're focusing on teacher success stories, as Donna mentioned, building a community of practice featuring discussion groups and teacher resources, and also sharing our research results. In terms of key tools, we established first a visual identity guide early on, which has really guided our look across platforms. For personnel, we have had one in-house communications manager who creates plans and executes them with the help of staff and outside contractors. Also, we just added one part-time online communities manager, and I'll mention more about that later. I want to focus now on the main vehicles we've used to deliver our messages and how the way we use them has shifted over time based on our ongoing analysis of data as we entered the dissemination phase. This largely addresses that marketing to the many part of the pyramid that Peter showed us earlier. Next slide, please. Okay, printed materials are still an important part of an effective communications program. As Donna mentioned, early on we developed printed marketing materials for recruiting purposes, and we still use those today, but primarily for face-to-face opportunities. We did try one direct mail campaign and did not see good results from it, so we haven't done much more with direct mail or sending out our hard copy printed materials through the mail. Currently, our print publishing efforts are shifting to providing summaries of our accomplishments, our research results, and our teacher resources. The website is the foundation of our communications program. We publish our URL, vista.gmu.edu, everywhere. All applicants apply online through our site. Up until now, the site has been primarily focused on recruiting, but we are currently in the process of revamping our entire site to turn it into an interactive communications portal. Our goal is to use it to better disseminate news and research results, and also to help us create a dynamic online community of practice. In the early years of VISTA, our media outreach efforts primarily consisted of news announcements, for example, when we opened a new implementation site. Now, as we're beginning dissemination, we launched an effort to share teacher success stories with local media over this past summer. It proved very successful. We are now planning a national campaign on our research results. Email marketing has been the foundation of our communications program. Email is still the way most people receive news and take action. So we've worked hard to build an effective email list, and we'll continue that ongoing effort. As Peter said, every name we can get on that list is important and is really helping us spread our messages. We use an online platform called iContact to manage our email marketing. iContact allows you to see who opened your email, who forwarded it, and gauge the effectiveness of every message that you send out. That information has really allowed us to fine-tune the timing, the topics, and our approach to sending recruiting messages. And we're taking those lessons now, and we're using them as we're shifting to develop an email-based news feed to support dissemination. Next slide, please. VISTA has used video extensively. We were fortunate to have a very talented in-house staff member who developed some initial video promos for us. We started using those promos, and they proved very effective at increasing applications to several of our programs and also in face-to-face marketing situations. Currently, we're evaluating options to hire outside video contractors to develop one or more dissemination videos on our program. Videos can be extremely expensive, but as Peter mentioned, you really need to be cautious with them because they can become extremely expensive and time-consuming. Social media has changed the way we all communicate since VISTA was started in 2010. The rise of Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube have presented new opportunities to get our messages out. VISTA now has a presence on all three platforms. Integrated analytics on those sites give us instant feedback on how well our messages are being received. And again, while these platforms are, quote, free, they can still be costly in terms of staff time. We were disappointed with the size of our audiences relative to the time we were putting into our social media sites. So we began testing paid advertising on Facebook, basically paying to promote posts. And we saw great success with rapid growth. We found it a relatively inexpensive option to really expand our reach. Just to give you an example, one of our posts on Facebook typically reaches about 200 people. But a post we recently paid $30 to promote reached almost 12,000 people. Once we started promoting our posts, our Facebook page went from 70 followers this past spring to 445 today in only 6 months, and it's still growing rapidly. This summer, to promote our, to support our social media efforts as well as our online communities that we're rolling out, we did hire a part-time staff person to manage those. With her help, we're seeing similar growth in Twitter. And we have found Twitter to be a great way to connect with media and also thought leaders in the education community. Two more key items to mention before I wrap this up. We work very closely with our partners, the Virginia Department of Education and the Virginia Association of Science Teachers. Both of those organizations publish information about our program in their online sites and their email messages. These partnerships have been really key to expanding our reach statewide because our own VISTA email list is not comprehensive, but when we combine it with the power of those two other organizations, we are able to reach a lot more people. Also, final point, SharePoint is the online platform that we've been using to store and share our teacher resources and host online teacher discussion groups. That platform also supports internal communications, and we're continuing to build it now rapidly as we're moving toward the end of the project. Next slide, please. Okay, here are all of our online sites. Please keep an eye on our website. In the next few months, we're going to be premiering our new interactive portal. Also, please feel free to follow our social media sites to see how we're using them to support dissemination. And so that's my presentation. I've tried to focus on how VISTA has used data to develop a flexible dissemination strategy, giving you some insight into what we've done and why we've done it. I hope that that proves useful to you in planning your own strategy, and we'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, you guys. I have put the social media sites in the chat room, so please take a quick look to make sure I didn't do any typos. And as you can see, they're also on the screen as well. We do have one question, and that was, did you hire, when you were first planning or developing your dissemination strategies, did you hire a firm or an outside specialist, or did you craft the strategy yourself? And this can be for both of all of the presenters.
This is Donna Sterling. We hired Jill, who you just heard from, to oversee. She's a communications specialist in a project as large as ours. We needed to go beyond my expertise. Up to now, I'd always done it in-house on the cheap, and we now have Jill hired on this, and we're doing a far more effective job.
It sounds like you really put quite an enormous amount of thought and effort into this, so thank you for that. And then Darcy would like to hear more about the online advertising and email marketing products. Oh yes, can you also say the name of that email marketing firm or product that you use again?
Sure. Yeah, this is Jill. It's called iContact, I-C-O-N-T-A-C-T. And it's one of many platforms that are out there for email marketing. It's a wonderful way to store all of your email lists. It allows you to set up your email messages within it, send it out, and it tracks. You can actually see email by email who has clicked on what. It gives you a percentage of how many people opened it, how many people forwarded it, and it's really a wonderful tool to keep track of how well you're doing. It also lets you know your unsubscribes, which is important information to have too, because if people are tired of your messages and want to stop seeing them in your inbox, that's something you need to be aware of, and you need to adjust what you're saying or how often you're saying it. The main online advertising that we've experimented with so far has been entirely on Facebook. As I said, we do the post promotions. And real briefly, the way that works, if you want to promote a post, it sends it out to your followers and their friends. And depending on how much money you put into promoting it, it will extend beyond that network to a group of people that you can define ahead of time. So for us, for example, we say Virginia State residents between the ages of 21 and 65 interested in science education. So it's a really wonderful way to expand your reach. And just by promoting one of our videos that we had posted on YouTube, we tripled the number of views on that video within about a day and a half. So you can really get a direct, immediate measurement of how effective you're being.
That's fabulous. Thank you so much for your time. I'm going to give a little applause to all of our presenters. And I just wanted to make sure that people knew that Kathy London did respond to the question about budgeting. So if you scroll up on your chat window, you can see the response. And we'll also collect this information and post it in the dissemination forum. But Nate, if you can move on to the next slide. At this point, we're going to come back to those questions that we asked you at the beginning. And Nate, I think we have time to do that. We'll be able to see the results. So if you can, type in the chat room the answer to the question number 2. What are the top 2 most important audiences that you want to reach in your grant with a dissemination plan? Whether they be teachers, departments of ed, funders, superintendents. If you can just type that in the chat room to all participants. So Nate's going to paste this into the Word document that we see there, and we will be able to send that out. So that way you can take a look and see if you're missing any important ones, key ones. We have instructional superintendents, school district administrators and counselors, potential funders, policymakers, school districts, district administrators, again, and potential funders. I know just from my work as a TA liaison, potential funders is a huge need, I guess. Well, obviously it's a huge need, but disseminating effectively and proficiently to potential funders is really important to grantees. The national education community, that's a wonderful thing. We at the Regional Educational Laboratory we're always trying to build up the base of information and research. All right. Schools and principals and students needing to recruit students to sign up for courses, which of course is key, especially to the beginning grants. So now we're going to move on to the next question, just to make sure that we respect your time. So what do you think is the most effective delivery channel? And you can see some examples there for disseminating for your grant, and knowing as you do your own budget and your own resources. And Jill had some excellent vehicles that she had in her chart, meaning email marketing, webinars, videos, conference presentations, journal articles. So here we have website videos and then NCAN presentation. More conference presentations, website, e-newsletter, policymakers. Yes, that's an important one. If you can get to your policymakers, they can hopefully ease, I don't want to say grease the wheels for you, that sounds negative, but hopefully ease some of the dissemination channels and funding that you might need. Having this be the day after a big elections across the country, I don't want to sound scandalous. All right. So we are now going to move on to the next slide. If there are any more that come up on the chat, then we will post those in and send them off afterwards. Oops. There. So thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate the fact that you spent your time with us. And you will see an evaluation form as you leave the forum, the webinar, so we really appreciate it again if you would fill that out for us. We do like to show, it's a piece of evaluation for our own work to our own funders. And then we'll also collect any unanswered questions and the questions that were answered and post them to the dissemination forum on the I3 community site. Our 4 presenters have graciously volunteered to respond to any that they can. So if you do come up with additional questions, please do post those. We'd like to get a good discussion going, especially for the newer grantees who are just beginning to think through all these things. If you have any troubles accessing the I3 community site, let us know at the I3TA email address at the bottom of the screen, or you can contact me, Heidi, and there's my email address as well. And last, we're considering expanding the community site to include content questions. We're interested in your content ideas, so we have a 1-question multiple choice survey that we'd like for you to complete. I'll send the URL after the webinar, but I'll also post it in right here in case you really want to go to it right now. Here it is, coming your way. And there. So we would really appreciate we're trying to make the I3 community site as useful as possible for you and as easy to access. And with that, again, thank you everybody, Kathy, Jennifer, Donna, Jill, and Peter, and Nate for your behind the scenes work, and we will see you another time.